Right, hi everyone. We might kick it off. Thanks everyone for coming along. This is part 2 or week 2 of a 5-week sprint around AI agents. Last week we sort of dug into, I guess, a high-level view of AI agents and how they work, perhaps why they are becoming a really interesting part of the sort of AI landscape. And I made the case that we should all be experimenting, tinkering, and looking to initially try to create a knowledge work agent that can start to offload some of the busy work that we do. So I'm just going to recap a couple of things. Some of you weren't able to make it last week. We are recording these sessions, but don't be so goddamn lazy not as to come on a Tuesday at 10:30. Book it into your diary, recurring every Tuesday. So thanks for those of you that are coming and putting in an effort. I'm incredibly nervous giving this presentation. It's a lot of bloody work putting it together, and inevitably it's not going to work. So appreciate you coming along, and let's rock and roll. All right. So today's session is all about building your agent. As always, you can jump on the slide deck. There are lots of resources and information. This will help you follow along as we move. I hope everyone's got a laptop. These are hands-on sessions, so get it open, get on the Wi-Fi, and let's rock and roll. There's a QR code there if you want to get onto the deck. So week 2, we're going to focus on, well, we're going to try to achieve these 4 things today. We're going to work on some instructions. We're going to work on knowledge, coding up our first tool, and connecting to other systems. Week 3, next week, we're going to have a break from the hands-on stuff, and I've invited Andrew Burt, who's a repeat founder, really impressive entrepreneur, and we're going to do the first of our AI founder showcases. So that'll be a presentation from Andrew about what he's working on. He's bringing AI to the insurance sector and embodying a lot of the lessons that we're going through here around how do you super skill or 10x an insurance broker and people in the insurance ecosystem. So I'm just going to quickly recap on some of the big ideas that we went through last week, which really I think I described as a way of thinking about probably the big moving pieces in 2025 and where the entrepreneurial opportunities are. I talked about swimming upstream to find the best possible sense makers that can help you understand what's happening in the world of AI, where it's going, and indeed those who are sort of setting the trend or creating the key inventions. This week I want to introduce you to a guy called Andrej Karpathy, formerly led AI at self-driving AI at Tesla, one of the very early OpenAI guys, unbelievable engineer, but also just a brilliant educator, is able to explain super complex topics in really simple terms, has a fantastic YouTube channel, and he just put up this video this week, which a lot of us have loved, where he talks about how he, probably the apex predator of the AI world, uses LLMs and AI. So if you're looking for best practices about how you might use these tools, Andrej is a great guy to follow, and that video is really excellent, which I've linked there. There's a deeper dive into the technical aspects of LLMs, which you can watch as well. He's also a great follow on Twitter, if you're on Twitter. So the big ideas that we covered last week, sort of five or six key ideas that I think I'm going to keep reinforcing, because for the entrepreneurs in the room, I think this is where the huge opportunities are now to sort of get in early and think about how you can create new opportunities. There's Satya Nadella's observation that AI simultaneously lowers the floor and raises the ceiling. Lowers the floor in the sense that it makes possible for newbies or non-experts to do expert quality work or produce expert quality outputs, and it raises the ceiling for experts to do even more ambitious stuff than they've ever done before. Recursive self-improvement is this notion that with AI you get this incredible a positive feedback loop where the outputs can feedback in on themselves if you engineer these systems in a certain way, and they continuously improve. That's sort of what we saw with Moore's Law, as I illustrated last week, where the Pentium 1 or whatever it was used in the computers that then created the Pentium 2 and so on and so forth. And you got this exponential this recursive self-improvement in Moore's Law, and you're now seeing it with the AI models, where today's amazing model is used to train tomorrow's amazing model, is used to actually write the algorithms and do the sort of hardcore data work and so forth in the future. So the third one is service as a software, this notion of flipping on its head the sort of last 15, 20 years of software as we know it, which has been how do we create software as a service. This is looking at the services industry, which is absolutely massive and numbers in the trillions of dollars, and thinking about what labor-intensive services can we turn into software using AI. The next idea was the 10x developer, which we've all known about for a while, the sort of mythical unicorn of a developer that has 10 times the capabilities of the next developer. Thinking about that notion and how AI allows us to dream of other 10x roles that previously you couldn't really think about. The 10x back office admin person, the 10x broker, the 10x accountant, the 10x coach, etc. And then finally, this sort of notion of getting over ourselves and being prepared to just give this a whirl, not sort of, I need to learn all of this before I can start doing something, flipping that on its head and saying you start and then you learn. So the provocations that I put to you guys last week is, what can you build that packages up expert level solutions into user-friendly tools and empowers anyone to achieve professional outcomes? What could you build that taps into this recursive self-improvement loop? What labor and intensive services could you turn into software? What kind of one-times job categories can you make into a 10x job category or role with AI? And then finally, what new thing have you started without any prior expertise? I see my friend Lee Kelson's over there, and he's now a full-stack developer. So this is where we want to go. A couple of interesting observations of the last week I wanted to share with you. Again, swimming upstream to the people who sort of shape all of this stuff. Toby is the founder of Shopify. And this was an interesting observation where he's saying he's pretty sure he's typing more into AI models than into email, company, Slack, etc. Work has shifted dramatically. Anyone starting to find a similar thing happening with their work? Yeah. And actually, even more interesting, I also definitely have read more words written by those AI models than written by humans in that same period of time. Another sort of favorite follower of mine is a guy called Hitan Shah, who's a sort of product ninja, a stellar resume of leading product, and he's put together this really fantastic second brain technique resource that I've linked to here, which is really how do you get the most out of what Toby just talked about, where you're using AI to help you intellectually, creatively, and what are some of the techniques you can use for that. So, his sort of provocation is that a lot of people are still treating AI like a fancy autocomplete, write me a press release, whatever, as opposed to really helping with their thinking. Anyway, that's a great resource I'd encourage you to look at. And then lastly, Satya, I think, has another fantastic observation. Now, this is a guy who runs Microsoft, probably this week the biggest company in the world. And what I like about Satya and listening to him and following him is he's a CEO who's on the tools. He's like using his own products and experimenting with other people's products and so forth, and then sharing what he's learning. And his observation on that podcast I shared last week is that he thinks with AI and he works with colleagues. That's his approach. Okay, and then the last one that I thought is actually a very clever way of thinking about this is that I don't know who this dude is, but he's an anon on Twitter where all the best stuff comes from, which is basically that our only KPI this year is how many tokens we use. If our token usage doesn't exponentially grow, we're not going to make it. Now, what's he really saying here? He's effectively saying, if you have intelligence that's too cheap to meter, why aren't you using it? And to some extent, the number of tokens that you're using is a sort of a metric for how much experimentation, how much building, how much thinking, how much are you using this incredible new resource that we have now that we didn't have just a couple of years ago. Because if you're not doing that, your competitors and others are going to be doing it. So it's actually a very simple metric, is to look at how many tokens are we using. In other words, how many words or how much code is being produced by the AI systems that we're using. So that's a good provocation, and I'm going to be measuring all of your token usage over the weeks and months ahead. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. So, part 2. Let's talk about the agent stack. We just briefly touched on this last week. And this is going to be super opinionated. And, there are myriad tools that one can use, and, everyone's highly opinionated and has their own tools. But in terms of teaching and showing people stuff, we can't cover every single tool. You sort of have to trust to some extent that, a ridiculous number of hours has been spent trying different tools and figuring out the right workflows. And we're sort of just trying to level you up straight to get going with stuff that works. But there are myriad different tools that you can swap into the stack that I'm going to go through today. But it's the one that we're going to teach, and partly because we've got a lot of people in this room who can help you learn different elements of it. So we talked last week about the move from being the knowledge worker, you, who uses these various tools, messaging, desktop apps, email, browser, SaaS, knowledge bases, etc. And you basically spend most of your time producing artifacts, quotes, proposals, presentations, emails, videos, posts, campaigns, etc., etc. That would pretty much sum up 80% of what most of us in this room do. And it probably, accords for like 80% of GDP or something like that. That's pretty sad, but that's how it works. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to move one layer up the stack to become the orchestrator, not to become the busy work doer, which we currently are. So we really want to start to create a knowledge work. We are the knowledge worker, but we want to create our own AI knowledge worker. And the AI knowledge worker is going to be the one that has the tools, that produces most of the artifacts. We, instead, are going to do the stuff that we uniquely are good at. We're going to focus on things like our taste, our ideas, our evaluation of the outputs, the goals, the instruction, the curation, etc. That's really where the value comes from, and the really highest quality sort of knowledge workers in the future will be the ones that have the best skills in those areas, as opposed to the ones that can, punch out these artifacts directly. Last week we talked about the sort of 4 pillars that I'm sort of proposing that we think about this from, the angle that we think about this from in terms of how we build these agents. They need, if they're going to work on our behalf, they need access to knowledge that we have. That's both sort of intrinsic knowledge in terms of how we like to do things and what the way we go about things, as well as sort of tacit, sort of practical knowledge about our organization, our projects, the people we work with, our goals, etc. Our instructions are basically codifying the way we work and the way we want it to work so that it achieves the outputs that we typically are producing. The tools are the tools that we give it so that it can work on our behalf. And then the evaluations are really our sort of constant assessment of the outputs of the artifacts that it produces to create this recursive self-improvement thing where if it's not producing good outputs, as we evaluate them, we're constantly tweaking the instructions, improving the knowledge and so forth to get this working really, really well. So the agent stack that we're going to be using in this program really consists of 3 main pieces. Cursor, which we introduced you to last week, which is an integrated development environment, of which there are many. Cursor is just a fork of an open source integrated development environment called VS Code. And the nature of VS Code is that it's pluggable, extendable, and as a result, there are just myriad extensions and plugins and things these days that you can plug in, including other agents. And you're going to have your own flavor of those over time that you're going to want to use. The second is Zapier, sort of much loved and much hated product, but the thing about Zapier is it has really done the hard work of connecting into the various tools, knowledge bases, etc., that we really don't want to be doing ourselves and spending a lot of effort doing. And most organizations, particularly startups and early stage, small to medium sized businesses, are comfortable with the sort of security and capabilities of Zapier. So that's going to be for plugging into existing workflows we have and tools we have, our email, HubSpot, Shopify, WordPress, all those different tools that are going to be important for artifact production. And then lastly is a tool called OpenRouter. I'm going to explain to you in a second. We'll continue using ChatGPT. There's a pretty generous free version of that. And Perplexity is another AI chatbot tool that has access to real-time web information that's very powerful as well. So I've done the economics on this. And if you use those three tools, Cursor at $32 a month, Zapier at about $48, OpenRouter if you put $5 of credit in there each month, and you use those two for free, you're looking at about $85 a month for your knowledge worker, which comes down to about 40 cents an hour. So if you can get really good at using this, you've got a 40 cents an hour worker who's able to do all this stuff for you. Effectively a mini-me that you pay 40 cents an hour. Okay, so what does Zapier do? Zapier is a platform that allows our agent to connect into a series of tools that we use. Think at last count 8,000 or something tools that they've integrated with. That is very easy to just auth. You just click on the tool, connect with your existing account, and you're off to the races. Those and many, many more. If you go to zapier.com/apps, you'll see all the apps that you can connect to via Zapier. OpenRouter is similar to Zapier in a way. It's a gateway that allows us to connect to pretty much all of the different AI models. And we're at a stage in the AI evolution where there's just an explosion in models. And each day, a new model comes out that has different capabilities, different strengths, different weaknesses. And to be able to tap into that full array of models without having to go and create accounts and put credit card details down with every single one of these different providers, that's what we use OpenRouter for. And our agent is going to use it because we're going to want to build tools that are intelligent. We're going to want to use AI in all sorts of little workflows. You know, take this thing and enrich it with metadata. Take this thing and summarize it. So we're going to want to use AI literally like a tap that we turn on and we turn off. And OpenRouter is the source of that intelligence that we turn on and we turn off. So, building the agent. Let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to open Cursor, which hopefully everyone's downloaded now and created an account in. And I've set up because I'm now a full stack developer, I've set up a public repo or repository to get us going really quickly. For those of you that are already all over this, you don't necessarily have to use this repo, but this is really to help those of you who don't yet have rules, knowledge, and tools sort of sorted out in a way that works well. I've got to give some credit to my friends Damien and Chris Drake here, who over the last month or so, since we did an onboarding into Cursor at our Coding from Beach, has spent a huge amount of time sort of working with Cursor to understand its strengths and weaknesses, particularly around rule creation. Because the fundamental thing that we need this agent to do is to follow the instructions that we give it. And that's not necessarily an easy task. So Chris is a pretty well-known hacker, and he has sort of hacked his way through Cursor to help really understand its innards to figure out what kind of instructions you need to give it for it to work well. And I've included some of those instructions that I've learned from Chris in this boilerplate. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to open Cursor, you're going to click on Clone Repo, and you're going to put this URL. And what that will do is effectively pull down the code for the starter pack that I've created for everyone. Does anyone need any help with that?
Mm-hmm. If Cursor loads your last session, how do you get back to that?
You go to just the File, New Window, step 2.
Yes.
Is everyone okay with that? Everyone up and running? Okay, great. So, just to quickly talk about what happened there, for those of you that haven't really used GitHub before, GitHub is kind of like the Dropbox or cloud service for storing and collaborating on code. Think Google Drive for code. And where we collaborate together on a series of documents in a folder on Google Drive, Word docs and slides and so on. With GitHub, we're collaborating on code files. So I've created effectively a Google Drive folder and I've put a bunch of code files up there. And when you set clone, it's basically copying those down to your machine. So if everyone's done that step, fantastic. Now we can move to the next step. Okay, so in your temporary folder or temp folder, you'll see that there's a file called rules for AI. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show you. So if we go to the temp folder, you'll see here. So you'll see this file here. All you have to do, Command-C or Command-A or Control-A, copy all of that text. And then what I want you to do is to come to Cursor Settings and go to Rules. And I want you to paste that into your user rules. Okay, we're gonna customize a few things in a second, but if you just get that in there, that's the boilerplate rules. That all you're really going to have to do is just make a few tweaks to the About Me section. We'll keep that relatively short at this point because we're going to expand on that in some other files. Is everyone okay with that section?
AI or project rules.
This is the main rules for AI. It's called. You might not have the latest Cursor version, but it's called Rules for AI for those that don't have the latest version.
So Chris, for those of us who are lagging behind a little bit due to download, whatever, is there a instruction list of all of this that we can access afterwards? No?
Yes.
Sorry.
Do you just need to download Cursor or?
Look, it's taking a while to install and I'm falling behind steps. That's cool.
Okay. It's all in that presentation, Mark, so you can just
Gotcha.
jump on and follow those steps. All right, so has everyone managed to get those rules pasted into their
Sorry, quick question again, Chris.
Yeah.
Does that take over rules for all of Cursor that we've already got in there?
Okay, so that's a good question. Now, without going into sort of absolute chapter and verse on this, which I think we sort of covered off mostly last week. In fact, this is maybe a good example for us to. I'm going to call upon my friend Chris Drake quickly. Chris, just in the simplest possible terms for the non-techies, can you just give us a quick Okay. This is what you might think of as how, with each chat message that we send to our agent to instruct it, what is going on behind the scenes? You obviously can see the words that you type into the chat box and that you send, but you don't necessarily know what's being included behind the scenes. For those of us that use ChatGPT regularly, you know that behind the scenes are included things like your custom instructions, some memories, some other bits and pieces that you don't necessarily type in, but are included effectively, invisibly behind the scenes. So to give you sort of some sense of how that works, when we send a chat message, what happens, and this is a moving feast, it's changing all the time as they develop the software, but the first block that gets sent in is basically the rules for AI that we just pasted in there. Okay, that gets sent in with every single message that we send. So a lot of what we have in there at the moment is a little bit hacky in order to get this thing to really follow and honor the rules. And this is from a lot of experimentation that Chris has been doing and the rest of us have been doing over the last 4 weeks, because we want to get you guys up to the point where this is working. You don't think, oh my God, this whole thing doesn't work. So this is the first thing that goes in. And then there's a whole myriad of other things that go in here with a chat message. So when you send your actual chat, let's just say this is the, why am I doing that? Sorry. When you send your chat message in here, of course, it's including things like the content from the current file you're working on and a whole range of other things. But with each of those messages, it's including these rules for AI. And what that allows the AI to do is it sort of understands how you want it to behave, regardless of where you are in the conversation. Okay, does everyone sort of get this concept? That as you're chatting, the rules are being sent in the background. Think of this as your custom instructions in ChatGPT, that with each message, the thing knows your name is John, and it knows what you do because you've told it in your custom instructions. So we're putting a series of rules in here, and then we have a series of other rules that we're going to include because we don't want to just stuff the prompt with huge amounts of rules, plus all the code and all the other things that it's going to get. So we keep this quite skinny, and then we're going to include other rules as we go over time. Does that make sense about what's going on there? Okay. Now, in terms of the actual rule content, you'll see a range of different things here. There's kind of like the initial emotional blackmail about, you're highly capable, blah, 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 blah. And then there's some stuff that, over time, various contributors have figured out work really, really well as prompts. This is a lot of Chris's work here, the rules for compliance. This is really sort of to try to track that the thing is following our instructions. I'll explain in a second how that works. And then you'll see we've said here that we've extended the capabilities with command line programs that can assist you. When I ask you to do something that requires tools that you don't natively have, in other words, Cursor's native tools are writing code, listing files, all those sorts of things. It can't natively make an update in HubSpot or send an email or those sorts of things. So we're going to extend its tools beyond the tools that it's been given, and we put those tools in a directory here called tools. And then we're often going to ask it to write code for us or create tools for us, and we're giving it, mostly here you can think of this rule as a sort of rule that branches off to other rules. So we say to it, if you're going to write code, go and read the instructions for writing code. If you're going to write in my voice, I want you to go and read about my preferences for how I like you to write, etc. Does that make sense? Now, over time, these rules will change a lot, and we'll get on the Slack and we'll say, hey, I found that this works, or there's a new update of Cursor that, we've noticed is doing this really well, and you'll come in here and you'll tinker with your rules and you'll customize them as you like. But this is a really great starting point, which we've tested quite a lot. So to start with, just make a very simple, my name is, my job is, and then just leave it at that. Keep this bit here about consult about me, and yours should say about my org or something like that, in the one that I shared. And those will link to some files that we're going to look at in a second in the knowledge directory. Is everyone up to that point? All right, cool. So now, just flip back here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an environment file. Now, an environment file is a file that contains the secret information that we're going to need to log into various services or connect with various APIs and so forth. If you've ever done any coding, you've used some variant of an environment file. So in Cursor here, just in the root directory, you're going to click on create new file, and you're going to call it .env, just .env. It's just like .doc. Why would you call a document .doc? But you start, then learn. So do that, and then go to the gist. The gist is basically a place on GitHub where I can store sort of blocks of text and share them privately. Think of it as a Google Doc link. Click on that link, grab the content from there, come back to your .env file and paste that in.
Did GitHub give you a warning when you put that in there?
Not on the gist, it didn't.
It doesn't on
it's
the
a
gist.
private gist, so
Okay.
yeah. I've intentionally kept an open router API key in there to get everyone up and running. But in the next couple of weeks, you'll create your own key, you'll put $5 credit in there, and you'll replace that key with your own key. I've intentionally just put a small amount of credit on so that we can experiment with it today and over the next week or so before we keep going. Has everyone done that step? Okay, let me just maybe dive in and explain what's going on here. So Open Router API key is going to allow us to get intelligence on tap as we need it by calling various LLM models. And we also need to tell our code where it goes to go and get that. And then we'll come to these other things. They're intentionally blank for the moment. Okay, so everyone's got that in place. We're now just going to go on a quick side quest to help everybody with some basic knowledge about themselves and about their organization. And for that, I want you to open a new browser tab and go to Perplexity. Perplexity.ai. And in a separate browser tab, I want you to go to LinkedIn and follow these instructions. So on LinkedIn, you're going to view your own profile.
Slow down just a little bit for me, please, Chris.
Okay, everyone to LinkedIn to their own profile. And then on your own profile page, you'll see there's this button that says resources. I want you to click on that button and save to PDF. And then let's flip across to perplexity.ai. Should look something like this. And I want you to click on this drop-down box here. And you'll see there's probably defaults for you to auto. I want you to drop that down and I want you to choose deep research. Okay, if you're logged into Perplexity, choose deep research, drop down. And then attach the profile that you've just downloaded to your downloads. As a PDF, or you can drag and drop it on there. And then the prompt we're going to give this is along these lines. I'd like you to write an about me using my LinkedIn profile. Which is attached. And then we're also going to say, I work for, and then you're going to put your company company URL, yeah?
That's in the profile. Should be.
No, but it doesn't matter, just put it in. Put the website in. I work for whoever the website is. And we're going to let it do its thing. Is everyone to this point? Okay, attach the profile. I'd like you to write an about me using my LinkedIn profile, which is attached. I work for blah blah blah. And you can just say use that in your research. And for those of you that are unemployed, I'm sorry.
Example.com. Sorry,
I
local.
work for example.com.
Sorry, I work for local host.
Tested example.
Okay, let's hit go and see what this thing does. Again, it is absolutely insane to me that this is a free thing that you can do. What this is going to do is it's going to take my LinkedIn profile,
Enhance all the lies.
one of the greatest works of fiction ever produced. It's also going to look at the URL that I've given it. And you can see it working through a deep research process to write an about me. This is very overkill, but it's more a technique I wanted to show you for producing this kind of content. So you can see it says, first let's look at the LinkedIn profile information.
About me.
Blah, blah, blah.
Mine doesn't sound as good as yours, Chris.
You don't know that.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, on the Hub homepage at the moment, I have a Wonderland for AI nerds, and it's gone and picked that out. It's not on my LinkedIn profile. It's not sort of in the core content of the Hub, website. So at the very bottom, once it's finished doing that for you, you can see the two sources that it used here. And this is what's called the reasoning chain. It's sort of reasoning through, thinking through, and running multiple steps in a research process before it finally writes the research report. At the bottom here, if we click on this little copy icon, it's going to copy that content in markdown format. And we can then go back to cursor and in our about
Chris,
me.
before you do, sorry, could you just please show me how you selected deep research?
Yes, so deep research.
So you can ask follow-up, but
Yeah.
you have to do it when you start the conversation.
Ah,
So when
right,
you
okay.
thread,
Yeah.
Chris, yours is in first person.
And there's the
Yeah.
It wrote it in the
And you
first
see what this
person.
is
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you
change
tell
it.
it to this?
No, I didn't. But
very much.
if you're not happy with it, just do it again.
Just tell it to do.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of, to me, it would be inherent in and about me that it would write in
Yeah,
the first
mine
person.
did third.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can just reprompt it and just say, please write it in the first person. Or in fact, this is a good point that you would just copy that, chuck it in ChatGPT and say, please rewrite this in the first person. You don't need to go and do a full deep research on it. Okay, did you find a mark, deep research on the
Yeah, thank
drop-down?
you.
Okay.
My friend next to me helped.
All right, so now that we have that content, we can go in and we can drop it into the About Me page. At the bottom, you'll see there's some citations and a little Perplexity promo, so just get rid of that at the bottom of that.
We're gonna need an hour to read about ourselves first.
Yeah.
Chris, is there any value at some stage of me just spending 1 minute talking about how you helped me 6 months ago and what that has led to?
Later. Thank you, Mark. I'm gonna get you to do a full testimonial.
Exactly.
And we don't have enough time for it right now.
Chris, none of this is true, but I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this alone is worth the price of admission, right? Like, it's the most unbelievable bio written about you ever.
Incredible, some of the stuff.
So, okay, so we've got a work of fiction, and then we're gonna do a similar thing with About My Organization, okay? And you can imagine in Perplexity here, we would say, I want you to write and about, let's call it an About My Org doc, which helps an AI agent understand all about the company, or all about the organization that I work for. My organization is the Digital Hub. It is owned and operated by the Noosa Shire Council. Produce.
If you speak louder, my voice transcription will help
Oh, actually, yes, I should have done that. Next one. Please produce a comprehensive About Me. Maybe not comprehensive, please produce a succinct, but I don't need to tell it that. Okay.
Are you adding a link to it, anything, or?
It should be able to find it, but yeah, I think for lesser known things, yeah, good point, thanks Vince. So I'll just go cite, and then I might go cite. And if you had any other relevant things, you would just throw those in there, right? If you had like a big project or something that you didn't think it would find, you know, you could say something like, here's a recent project that we did, or something like that, if it was on the internet. All right, so let's click go on that. by the way, ChatGPT now has an even more powerful feature called deep research. It does a similar sort of thing, but is even more comprehensive. You could use that if you preferred.
And is that just in the 3 mini?
I think these days they've got this auto thing where it just automatically picks the models, but yeah, you can use it in, let's see, in 3 mini, in 4.0.
Yeah, cool.
So Chris,
You can even use it in ChatGPT tasks, so you could get it to produce a research report every day and email it to you automatically as a task. Yeah.
what do you need to know about the mechanics of deep research versus just ordinary prompts?
Yeah, so the general approach to deep research with most of these models is that what they do is what ChatGPT does quite well, because it uses a hell of a lot of compute to go and do a research, potentially hundreds of searches, a lot of scraping of information. So ChatGPT will first confirm the research that you wanted to do by asking some clarifying questions. Perplexity didn't do that, but it'll ask a couple of clarifying things just to narrow down, to make sure it understands what you want it to do before it goes off for 10 minutes to do it. And then what it does is it takes your initial prompt and it reasons through what sort of top level searches should I go and do to find out about this. So it constructs a series of search queries and then sub-search queries that it would then go. And it basically goes off, runs a series of queries, runs a series of sub-search queries, scrapes and gathers all of that information into like a temporary repository, and then iterates through a series of internal prompts around, is this relevant? Does this answer to the brief? You can imagine it going through these reasoning steps behind the scenes. And then finally, once it sort of has a candidate, relevant body of research content, it produces the research output, which is generally a long document with citations to the original sources. Yeah. Yeah. So, a fun way to test it, terrible way to spend compute cycles, is to go and ask it to do a comprehensive research program on who the greatest players are in your particular football team. And you'll watch it go off and spend 10 minutes like coming up with this massive amount of research about, why Tony Lockett was the greatest full forward ever to play for the Swans, and, all the stats and blah, 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 blah. Quite fun. Okay, so you can see it's reasoning through here. It's found initial information. You can drop these down and see sort of what it's doing. It's wrapping up, it's reasoning. Here you can actually drill in and see which websites did it use.
Very good.
Everyone going okay with that? Mine's taking a little while to finish. All right, so if we've got that now, we can run our first little test of our agent. Is everyone ready for this? Let's just make sure that in our cursor rules, if you change the name of those files, we'll obviously want to make sure that our rules are referring to the correct files. Remember how they said about me? So for example here, I think I've got about_me, and the rule might say about me.md. So I'm just going to make a little change to that. About the hub, and I'm just going to make that about me. Obviously we just want those things to correspond with the file names. Does that make sense? Okay, so I've called that about the hub in mine, and I'm going to change the name here, about the hub. Right.
Chris,
Okay.
is this going to give us a framework for all future projects in Cursor, or is this just specific to this project?
This is really just a starter, but I think those rules are a great starting point for probably the next few weeks, months potentially. The knowledge that you build out is obviously going to be proprietary to you, and you'll notice that in my rules I've said it's not putting the about me and about the hub in every single request. It's only that when I ask it if it needs to know more about me. So for example, this is worth digging into. So let me just go back to them, and yours will be similar. you can see what I said here. Consult these two files in the knowledge directory when you need to know more. So let's just say, for example, I gave the agent something like, remembering that the agent's knowledge, as Andrej Karpathy explains, it's like a zip file of the whole internet. So it's got a zip file of the whole internet. So it would already know what the Parisian Digital Hub is and have some sort of sense about that. But it wouldn't know about my role, for example, or my background, or whatever it is, just from these rules here. And it wouldn't know that from the zip file on the internet. So if I asked it something like, write a bio for me that we can put on the website, something like that, it would go, I need to go to the About Me file and see more about Chris and do that. So now we can test that and I'll show you. But yes, you're going to grow the knowledge, you're going to grow the instructions beyond just the ones that I've got in here, and you're going to grow the tools. And that's how you're going to build your agent over time.
And can you bring, like, if I develop a tool in here, can I bring it into another project?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is to create tools that are what are called command line interface tools. So they're sort of standalone little programs that they're almost like internal APIs, where, for example, a create email tool, you just give it the subject and the body as parameters effectively, and it'll create the email. You know what I mean? You pass that in as a set of API parameters effectively. Okay, let's give this thing a try. So on the right-hand side here, if you don't already have it, you're going to click on this button at the top here, which is going to open your agent panel, and you're going to click on plus to create a new chat, and then the drop down here. Has everyone got this version of Cursor, or have some of you got older versions? Has everyone got this now? Okay, awesome. So we're all on the same page. This is where the model selection happens. These are models of differing capabilities. The default model, actually Claude 3.5 Sonnet is still very, very good for most tasks. In some ways, Claude 3.7 is too good. It just, it can be quite proactive. And that's why we have some quite specific things here about your modus operandi, your behavior, You just do exactly what's required. Don't go off and be proactive and do all sorts of other things. Just do what we ask you to do. Okay, so once we're in here, we can now start to do something quite cool, which is we can say, why don't we try create a landing page for my organization. So just while it's doing that, you can see here what it's doing. That's not a very detailed instruction I've given it. Create a landing page for my organization. I'll help you create a landing page for the organization, the Parisian Digital Hub. How does it know that? We put it in the rules for AI. First, let me fetch the rules for creating tools. How does it know it should do that? We told it in the rules for AI that we've extended its capability with tools. So it goes and reads this how to make tools. And in the how to make tools, we've given it pretty specific instructions for things like landing pages, where we've said, don't make them complicated, just give me a single index.html file that I can pull up in the browser and I can view, right? And a whole range of other tools there for writing its own tools, creating little websites, and creating web apps. May have got stuck. Anthropic servers are getting smashed so much at the moment, you will find failed requests.
3.5 is...
I would say it's possible that this has failed. I'm just going to rerun it, basically. Let's just see which model I've got. 3.7 Sonnet. So you notice how I've gone back up to the prompt here that failed. Clicked on it. It's now editable again. and I'm just gonna send it again. You can watch it in action, it's thinking, okay. It's got create a landing page for my organization, but above that it's got my rules. It's reading the rules, now it's reading my prompt, now it's figuring out what it should do.
Been pretty bad for about 18 hours, and the forums are washed with angry people, by the way.
Always happens when I'm doing a demo. Is it working for anyone?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah.
Did it make a landing page for you, Vince? Is
I
it coded?
initially ran it as 3.7 and it froze,
You did 3.5?
and then I just went default and reran it. And now
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do mine 3.5. Should work just as well.
I mean, it's stuck on generating the HTML, index.html in my case. I mean, it looks a lot like what you've got going there, Chris.
Yeah, if you find yours got stuck, just go back up to the prompt, select Sonnet 3.5, which is the probably
GPT 4.5 is another good option.
Does it work?
Yeah.
That's it.
So what you should see on the left-hand side here, that wasn't there initially, is a sites directory. Where it's gonna keep our websites. And here you can see it's generating the index.html file. Alright, it's completed it. Now if I want to view this, I just have to right click on that. Copy the path, in other words, where is this file? If I open it in my browser. I've got a landing page with content that it's drawn from about my organization. You see that? Everyone managed to get that far?
Were we supposed to tell it where to save those files? Because it's given me instructions for saving up what it's given me.
Yes.
Did you tell them to do YOLO?
Have you got YOLO mode enabled?
Yeah, if you haven't got the setting that we put in place last week, which is the YOLO mode, let me just show you where you do that. Cursor settings, features. You'll see there's this feature here called YOLO mode under features. You want to have that checked, because that allows it to basically proactively do what it needs to do.
Got that checked.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm obviously running an old version of Cursor here.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any of the rules, MCP or.
Yeah, you'll be running an older version, but you've still got you should still have that YOLO mode under general features or something like that. If you go to Cursor, check for updates, top left, look at my screen up there. Cursor, check for updates, you see that?
No. It says restart to update.
I reckon it might have just downloaded the new page.
Anyone else having issues? Did everyone get a website made for them?
Oh,
Did.
you wanted YOLO, wasn't you?
I mean, guys,
Well, no, see, I'm not getting.
isn't that absolutely staggering what just happened there? Like, don't you think that's,
Oh man, we did this last week.
don't you think that's just like, those of you that don't have a week's worth of cynicism from being here last week, don't you find that amazing?
How do I add them in so I can see the rules?
Yeah, so that's a little taste of the value of the rules that we created early on. So honoured our rules, we gave it a pretty fuzzy prompt, went and looked in our information and the knowledge to figure out what it should use for content, and then it built a website using, the latest and greatest CSS and so on. We didn't have to tell it any of that specifically. Now, if you want to iterate on this, you could say,
And then
create a bio
it'll update, and then if
page
it's the very latest,
for-
it will then say, check it out.
create a Teams page, or create a Teams section and add me with my bio.
So now have a look, so now have a look at cursor.
Yeah, so guys, it goes without saying that I could create another knowledge file called my preferred styles, right? And I could put, these are the primary colors that I would like, this is the font that I prefer to use, you know, et cetera, and then it would look at my preferred styles and it would style the website using that stuff.
You could upload your existing brand.
You can, and I mean, I think it's always useful to sort of process that stuff. So just like we did, we could have copied and pasted our LinkedIn in here, but by processing it and creating it about me, we are sort of creating something that is specifically developed for the AI to read. You know what I mean? So I think that's a tip I would have is it's, given that these are going to be write once, run many times, it's worth putting a little bit more effort into the rules and the styles and stuff. Because that's really where, you know, to go back to the point, you know, that we talked about earlier here, you know, it's this stuff here, right? Is it producing the website? That's our evaluation. Does the website look awesome? Is it using our colors and stuff? No, it's not. Okay, well, we need to go and we need to improve the instruction so it's got what it needs. Is it using the right content? No, it's not. Well, we need to make sure we curate the right knowledge into the knowledge and so forth, and we just keep this going.
So for the branding example, would you follow the same steps that you did in Perplexity where you uploaded the brand kit into there and then said, write me some guidelines for an AI assistant?
Probably for the sort of, I probably wouldn't use Perplexity for that. I'd probably use just ChatGPT. I would just say, or even Claude, in Cursor itself, there's a chat mode there where you could ask it to do it.
If you've got a style guide, or you can just make a style guide and then take that style guide and give the style guide to it, it'll follow those rules. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, I mean, it's also got incredible vision now. You can literally just like give it a screenshot of the current website and say, you know, figure out the styles, by the way, the font is such and such, figure out the colors, and it'll just do it.
Works out the font as well.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing in that respect. Okay, let's keep moving. So where have we got to here? At the moment, we have some knowledge, we have some instructions, we've given it a tool, which is its ability to write code, and we can produce an artifact. In this case, it's an artifact called website. But equally, how about this? We could say, let's give it an instruction like this. Let's create a new chat. So you click on the plus button at the top here, and let's say, please write a one-pager about my org, introducing myself briefly.
Voice chat on that, Chris?
I do, okay, all right. Please write a one-pager in the, well, you'll know where to put it. Please write a one-pager that I can use as an outbound document to tell prospective members about the hub and myself.
Right, capability statement.
Got rid of the ums and the ahs.
Write one pager.
Too much of a pain in the ass. Yeah, sure, just with the capability statement.
Okay. Outbound. Hopefully it knows what I meant.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Terrible
I'm
accent.
still getting blown away by.
Just chat.
Not long. Yeah, that's a very required.
Were we using Composer last week?
Yeah, the software is updated now, and Composer sort of just agent, is called agent.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so
That's why.
so there's sort of,
Gotcha.
yeah, there's a couple of different modes here. Agent is the one that we want to use. It formerly was Composer agent.
On the old version.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
But yeah, so if you select Composer agent for all of these tasks,
Yeah.
it should do. Sorry, yeah, we're still getting a bit caught on the
Yeah.
old version, new version thing.
It only changed like 3 days ago, so.
All right, so you can see what it's done here. It's created a notes folder if it isn't already there. It's written this one pager. I can right click on this and go open preview, and you can see a beautifully formatted markdown document, which I can of course copy. I can go to Google Docs. I can create a new doc. And I now have a one pager that I can use for outbound. I can download it as a PDF, whatever I like. Okay, so we just produced an artifact from knowledge using instructions. Everyone got that flow?
How did you get from, sorry, I missed, how did you?
Yeah, okay, so in here, so
Oh, the preview.
yeah, so if you just right click on a markdown document and preview, it'll just open up another little tab and show you what the formatted version of that markdown looks like, and then I just copied it and pasted it.
Chris, your clue to us on converting files into markdown text, is there a particular app that you'd recommend?
If I had a lot of them,
Yeah.
and I needed to sort of batch process them into markdown, I would probably write a tool to do that in here, and I would say, I want you to write a tool. Should we try it? Well, we can try.
I can't
that,
follow you.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
so what I would do is I would create a folder with all of my Word docs, let's say.
Yeah.
And I would say, please write a tool that goes through the folder called docs.
Yeah.
And for each document converts the Word doc or whatever document it is into Markdown, and it'll write code. And then you'll say, now please run that program, and you'll watch it.
Because there's two domains here, there's startup, everything that applies to startup, and then there's everything that would then apply from startup to scale up. So as you're shifting into slightly more complexity,
Yeah.
my head's in both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the techniques apply to both, but yeah. So yeah, has everyone done a little test of so again, artifacts, like the world revolves on artifacts, contracts, memos, emails, blog posts. And that's what we're gonna be getting this thing to do more and more and more of for us. We've just had it do 2 artifacts that could have taken us hours to do. Writing 1 page is for an outbound thing. Creating a landing page could take hours to do that stuff. Okay, let's create our first more complex tool where we connect out. So I want everyone to jump to Zapier. If you haven't already got a Zapier account, please create a free account. I would like you to create the Zapier account. Just go to pricing. It's called the professional account. You can try it free. I think there's a 1 month free or something like that. So everyone managed to do that? All right, so we're in Zapier. Everyone got an account? Okay, great. So let's go step by step here. This is going to be, you're going to need to follow step by step here. So you should be seeing, hopefully you're on, let's just see if I go to the main Zapier page. You'll want to hit the create button. Has everyone seen the create button in Zapier? Hit create and then zaps. Create zap. Everyone's in Zapier now. We've created a new zap. The first thing we're going to do, the way Zapier works is it's basically a workflow platform that operates on 2 principles. Something creates a trigger and something runs an action. The trigger we're going to be using is that basically what we want to do is we want to be able to have our agent be able to produce to be able to get knowledge and produce artifacts for us. A lot of that knowledge is stored in systems that we've been using for years. There's knowledge in our email stored in Gmail or Outlook. There's knowledge in our calendar. There's knowledge in our CRM. There's knowledge in our Shopify. There's knowledge in our Google Analytics. There's knowledge in all of those different places. And then there are artifacts, emails, posts, documents, messages on Slack, all those things you can think of as artifacts that we produce. So we want our agent to be able to get access, to be able to do all of those things. And what we're going to use is we're going to use Zapier as our sort of gateway into all those different apps, both for sort of retrieval of knowledge purposes, but also for creation of artifact purposes. Does that make sense? Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a very powerful trigger capability in Zapier called a webhook. And a webhook basically is it's like an open-ended API that we can call to with just about anything and then trigger from that a workflow. So we're going to create a webhook, and when we do this, Zapier is going to give us a webhook URL. So let's just think of it's going to be something like zapier.com/webhook with some kind of ID, ID equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what we'll be able to say in our cursor rules, or one of our tools, is when I want to create an email, hit this webhook with subject to CC body, right? This webhook will basically get this is called the payload. It will receive this payload. The payload will look something like this. Subject will be test subject. 2 will be something like, cwbowden@gmail. CC we won't necessarily put in there. And body will be, this is a test. This is a test. So our agent is going to run a tool that sends a payload to the Zapier webhook. And once we've caught that, it's called catching a webhook in Zapier, we can do anything with that now. So let's go through that. Is everyone seeing a page like this to create a Zap? Okay? So let's click on the first one, which is the trigger. And you'll see on the top right here, it says webhook. So let's click on webhook. And all right, so we've got that. The trigger event is going to be catch hook. So if you go down here to trigger event and you click on that, you see it gives you the option to catch hook. So catch hook. And then the next step, if you hit continue, you can ignore that for the moment. Go to continue again to test, and you'll see it has given us a URL here, which you can copy. Does anyone need me to do that again? So we had our setup, we chose webhook, we chose catch hook, we clicked through on the configure, we didn't need to do anything right now on that. It took us to test, and we have this URL. Has everyone managed to get that far?
Yep.
Now we're going to copy that URL, we're going to go back to cursor, and in our .env file, we had a thing called Zapier email webhook URL. We're going to paste it in there. Okay, so now it should look something like that.
In your env.
In your .env file.
I was lagging behind a bit.
Okay, so just to recap, we're in Zapier now.
You can make one.
Rowie, can you help Matthias with Zapier? Just get set up in Zapier.
Just make a new file.
Our trigger is a webhook, catching a webhook. So basically it's like a listener, it's listening all the time, 24/7. You can hit this thing with a payload And then when you hit it with a payload, now it's got some data, now we can put that through a workflow. Has everyone managed to get that? We've got our webhook URL, which we brought back here and we put in our .env file. And as you can see, it has this set of IDs here, which will be sort of proprietary to us, like a password in some ways. Everyone at that point? Okay, great. So now, let's create an action. And our action for this, let's just quickly test the trigger. Let's skip the test, sorry. And let's click continue. And now we're going to the next step. And the next step, choose your email that you use. If it's Gmail, if it's Outlook, you will find it here somewhere. So I'm going to choose my Gmail because I already have my Outlook set up. And then my action event is going to be create draft. So I wanted to create a draft of an email. Everyone with me?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm going to have the step to authenticate with my Gmail. So I'm going to click sign in. It's going to pop the usual Google authentication thing. I'm going to choose my email. Continue. Allow. And now I have connected my email to Zapier. Everyone step through those steps? Fantastic. All right. So, if everyone's managed to do that, does anyone need help? You all fine? Okay, excellent. So now we've connected up. Now, just think about this. This is amazing. We've connected our email. And if you look at these action events here, we're going to create a draft, but there's many different things you can do with email, including finding emails. So remember what I said, email is a source of knowledge. What about when you can say to your agent, go and get all the emails from Richard Lowe and find out what the status is of X. You know, we'll be able to search our email for emails from Richard Lowe, or find all the emails about membership cancellations, whatever it might be. Get the emails, now we can start to, we've retrieved knowledge, now we can do stuff with that. Does that make sense? Okay, for this one we're just going to create a draft email because we always want to evaluate before we just start sending emails out. So, let us now, if we've gone and we've put our Zapier email webhook in here, let's create a new chat and let's say, please send an email to webboden@gmail.com introducing myself. Okay, everyone at that step? So now, let's see if this thing works. Please send an email to webboden@gmail.com.
Put into the ENB.
Yeah.
Introducing myself. Let's see what it does. I noticed that you want me to send an email introducing yourself. However, I want to make sure, would you like me to blah, blah, blah.
Chris, why is it when you use the create draft rather than the send an email action?
Yeah.
You now ask you to send the email. Isn't that contradictory?
Sorry?
So is
No.
that,
No, because if we actually go into this use email tool, it sort of explains what it should do.
right, okay.
Yeah. Just make sure there's nothing in here that's contradicting anything. Just send an email to blah, introducing myself, couldn't find knowledge about me.
Please send an email to introduce myself.
It says, but it didn't do it for me.
It's created a new file for me.
No. See, if you see it start going off the rails like this, which is doing, just immediately stop it. So please send an email to me. I was gonna say, use the email tool.
Okay. It's not working.
It says it.
It's not working properly. You just try writing at the end of that case.
So a few of us, Chris, says it says it's sent it, but none of us is seeing it actually have been
Because
sent.
we've got to go back to Zapier and do a couple of things.
Okay.
But I wanted to just create the payload, and then we're gonna go to Zapier and do something, okay? Okay, so you can see it should have created an email, a sort of temporary document, intro email, which is put in the temp file here. You can see intro email. I'm Chris Bowden, blah, blah, blah. All right,
Saying any of that.
and now if we go to Zapier, it's just done that.
Do you know what my email's doing? It's introducing the AI agent to me. It says I'm an AI assistant working with you.
You know your place.
You have to improve the instructions. Okay, so if we go to this step here, catch hook, what we need to do is we need to now obviously we need to explain to it. So let's test the trigger. You can see here, now that I hit test the trigger, it goes, okay. And it sees that there's some data that it's been sent as a payload. Do you see this? Okay, let's go back here. So in the catch hook step, if you go continue, and you go continue here, you should see an option to find records, or you should see it automatically bring up records here that it's been sent. You guys seeing that? Yes, you are. Okay, that's fantastic, because it means our agent has used the tool correctly, has sent a thing to Zapier to our webhook. Now we just have to tell our workflow which fields to use where. Okay, so if we go here and we say, okay, go to request B, and let's say continue with record, and say continue. Now, okay, this is really important, so follow along with this step here. Let me just go back a step. Okay, we're in Zapier. We caught the webhook, and you can tell you've caught the webhook because you should see here in the test that it's found some data records. So in other words, this has happened. When we told our agent to do something, it sent something to that with the information that we wanted it to. And that is now showing up here as request. As a request. Is everyone seeing that in Zapier? No. Okay, let's take a step back. Have you made sure you've put your Zapier webhook here into the .env file? You definitely have.
Yeah.
Okay, so it should look like that there. And then when you asked it to, when you said please send an email to so-and-so introducing myself, what it should have done was, it should have done something along these lines. Look, found the tool, written the email, and then called the tool. You can see here. Did it do it? Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, so let's jump into Zapier, and here you should now see this request in your catch hook test. Yeah? Does everyone see that? And then if we click continue with selected record, continue, you'll see it now takes us to this where we need to map the fields that came from the payload to the various fields that we want to create the email with. Okay, so here we'll go to, and we'll click on this little plus button here. And what this should show us is the to field that we can select. Okay, everyone watching, this is really important. So here, once we're in the create draft section, you want to click on this plus button, because now we want to select which of the things in the payload that came from the agent go into the to, body, etc., etc. So we go here and we say, in fact, yeah, this is already suggested it to us, quite clever. So we can just click on that, click on that. Oh. Let's get rid of that. Stupid compound. Plus. 2 is obviously going to be the 2. The subject is obviously going to be the subject. The body is obviously going to be either the HTML, I would go with the HTML body, okay? And then if we click continue and we test this step, what we should now see, let's go to your correct account, drafts. Okay, I can see that that has put a, not interpreted the thing properly, so I'm gonna go back to configure.
Somewhere to tell it's HTML mail, yeah. There you go, body type.
Body type HTML, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. So just quickly to recap, you're going to click on the plus here, you're going to select the 2, you're going to click on the subject, you're going to select subject. You can of course put your from name in and your from email address in. The body, you're going to select HTML body, and then you're going to click continue. You're going to retest the step, and then if I go back to my drafts here, refresh, I should see this draft, the nice HTML email that's been created. Did you see that? Okay, so just to clarify again, we caught the webhook, gave us a URL, we put in our .env file, and then in our Gmail step, we needed to configure that and map the different fields that came with the payload. So the 2 must go to the 2, the subject must go to the subject, and so on, which we did. And then we can run the test. We're happy that the test works, we can hit publish. And now what we've done is we've given our agent access to creating emails for us, which is a massive number of the artifacts that we produce. So to the extent that we have lots of knowledge, we can just tell our agent now, hey, send so-and-so an email about blah. We can go, take the knowledge, distill it using our instructions, create a draft straight into our email. And of course, the nice thing that you can do there is you can go to town on an HTML email template. If you want to make a really beautiful email template, you know, here's one I prepared earlier.
So that's your 2.
Here is one that.
And how did you create this template, Chris? Where does
Literally what you do is go to any email template website, get a free account.
Yeah, so click
view source, grab the HTML, chuck it into Cursor and say make a template using this.
And so then in your instructions, do you say please use the template, Tokenizer template?
You could go to the use email tool and you could amend it, so please use this template, and you could even have multiple templates. So you could say, please create an email using this template, and it would use that template. So you could have multiple different templates that it could use. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, this, one of my favorite tests of this is, you can see I'm testing this a lot over the last couple of days, where I use Twitter as my bookmarks and I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Now, there's a lot of effort to go and repurpose all of that content to go and then write like a digest email that you could send each week, for example. So now I can say, go and look at my Twitter bookmarks and go and get everything I've posted on LinkedIn and make a digest that I can send out to Hub members about all the interesting things that have happened this week. That's a lot of work that you would have to do. And as a result, none of us send those kinds of emails because it's just too much work. Sending a newsletter email is a pain in the ass to go and do that. You know, to be able to just leverage all of your like social media posts and LinkedIn posts and have it go and get those and then produce a newsletter for you from that content is a massive time saving. You know? So yeah, I hope that sort of explains where we're going here. Retrieve knowledge, so in that instance it'll be retrieving my bookmarks or might be retrieving my LinkedIn posts or my Instagram posts or whatever it might be. And then it's producing a new artifact called email newsletter that I can now send out to, you know, n number of people. Can even connect into MailChimp automatically send that off for me. I didn't even have to go and like tinker in MailChimp. Does that make sense? So what I've shown you there, guys, is that this workflow in Zapier of catching a webhook and then piping it into whatever you want it to, right? That could have been, instead of create email, it could be create slide presentation. It could be create a grant application. Could be, you know, where I would just be giving it templates each time. And I would say, take this payload, map it to the output, so the artifact output, so if it's a Word document, a Google Slides presentation, whatever it might be, this is a workflow that you can use over and over and over. And you would just, you know, should we, let's try and create our own tool as a way of wrapping up the sessions, okay? So, let's do this. Let's create a new Zap in here. So go to, did everyone get, well, I know some of you got stuck a little bit there. Come and chat with me later, I'll try and help you. But did everyone manage to get the tool, talking to Zapier, sending something? Like, that's the main thing I wanted you guys to see, because now the sky's the limit. You can get it, send email, update HubSpot, you know, get the latest information from our Shopify sales, write a report about that, you know. That ability to connect in and out of existing systems of record is a massive, massive upside. So, let's go back here and let's create our first tool where you guys are gonna do that for yourselves. We'll start by creating a Zap. And so we'll hit Zap, create a Zap. And I want to say, catch a webhook and create a Google Doc with the content.
What I wanted to do was check.
So Copilot, Zapier Copilot's like a little wizard that'll just help you set these steps up pretty quickly. I forgot. Okay, so we're gonna add these steps.
3 records.
Catch the webhook.
If you click on that arrow, you can actually see it.
Go to my M file here.
There's nothing.
I'm gonna create a new one called Zapier
Yeah, you see, there's nothing else in this
box. URL equals that.
There you go. There's some error.
What does this do? It's gonna create a document name. It's gonna create document content. It's gonna put it somewhere in the drive.
So this is.
Okay. So.
Just say try again.
Alright. So I'm just gonna give you a quick demo of how we can now start to create our own tools. So I wanna now create a tool where I can say, create me a Google Doc with new content, let's say. I can go and do that copy paste that we did earlier, but I would like it just to create a Google Doc, because once it's in a Google Doc, I could have another trigger off of that says, take the Google Doc and translate it into 5 languages, email it out to these 5 addresses. You can set those workflows up in Zapier, right? So I created a new webhook. I've put it in my .env file here called Zapier Docs webhook. I'm going to create a new chat, and I'm going to say to it, please make a new tool
That's what I haven't been doing.
that will use the Zapier Docs webhook to create a new file in my Google Drive with the contents you provide.
Taking longer, so just ask it. Just say, please record the response from this request.
Please make a new tool that will use the Zapier Docs webhook to create a new file in my Google Drive with the contents you provide. Okay. So I'll help you create a tool. It's going to read the creating tools instructions. First, let me check if we have a tools directory.
Okay, so now.
Great, I see we have a tools directory. Let me see if there's a manifest. Well, there's not.
Find your record.
So you can see it's planning. I'm going to create a Python script that sends data to a Zapier webhook.
Yeah, so go back to the cursor now.
Create the tool.
See.
Google Drive file creator.
What was the final part of that prompt?
saying it.
Create a new file in my Google Drive.
Yeah, it was please make a new tool that will use the Zapier Docs webhook, which I've added in here, to create a new file in my Google Drive with the contents you provide.
Somebody's controlling it.
Okay?
Oh, okay.
Chris, did you link to the, in that prompt, you just said Zapier Docs webhook URL?
Yeah.
You hear what I'm saying?
You didn't say go to the .env file or anything like that?
No. So now it's created a tool.
That might be actually working.
I'm just gonna say, let's just have a look at this code.
But I think what's happened is your stuff is not getting there. I think in the NP warning, I don't know.
Webhook URL is in the end. Wow.
Excuse me.
That's it. Did you tell it specifically to use the Zapier Docs webhook?
I just said to it then, because the first version of the code that it wrote, it wrote a tool that you had to pass the Zapier webhook URL into, and I said the webhook URL is in the .env file. So what am I learning here? I should, in my main how to create tools instructions, I should update those, which I do now, to say the right approach, blah, 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 development principles. I would say something like command line tools, development principles. I'll say variables, API keys, system variables, and secrets are always in the .env file. Look there when you need to before coding, something like that. Yeah.
You just leave that up one thing.
So by way of demonstration now, if I ran this whole thing again, let me just show you something really useful here. So what we can do, this button here is very important. This is called the restore checkpoint button. So restore checkpoint means we can go back to the state of this whole repo before it ran this prompt and started doing stuff, which is very important when it starts changing stuff, right? So here I want to go back, I want to restore the checkpoint, continue, and I want to resubmit this prompt. because I've changed my instructions now. So rather than saying, no, you shouldn't have done it that way, whatever, and just ending up with this long chat where it forgets about stuff, you instead go back, restore, fix your rules, improve your prompt. Yeah, that's the much better workflow. And by the way, the same is true of using ChatGPT or any of those other tools. If it doesn't give you a good output the first time, don't then say to it, no, that's not what I wanted, blah, 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 blah. Instead, go back to your prompt and clarify and fix your prompt in the first instance, okay? Because otherwise, as you go through the conversation, it's forgetting what you did earlier. So that's a best practice. So let me try it again. This time, it should use the env thing. Let me just fetch the rules. Now it's going to read the rules. Now the rules say that it should use the env file. Let me check if there's a manifest. I've got something down about the manifest in here.
Oh, yeah. Development. Yeah.
Automated, it's just pure age.
Yeah, this is visual placement, visual preference.
Great. I see there's already a Zapier Docs webhook URL configured in the env file. Now I'll create the tool that will use this, okay? So that's a big difference for the first time where I haven't told it that.
You can get cursor to maybe let's go back.
Folks, I realize that I did include something in here that I should have deleted. In your how to make tools instructions, there's a section that says tool manifest. Unless you know what you're doing, just delete that for now. Just so that for those that are interested, as you build lots and lots and lots of tools, which you will do.
So he's saving, that's good.
If you ask it to do something for you, and it has to go and read the code of every long tool, that ends up chewing up all its memory. So instead what I do is I create a manifest file that says, basically it lists out the tools and the key things that you can do with the tool. Yeah, so rather than having to go and read all of the code, you just make like a little readme, like a document that tells it what tools it has. But I haven't included that in here, so you might just want to delete that for now.
It's asked me if I want to add this new one. It's asked me if I want to add it to the manifest.
Yeah, well that's good, and you just say yes, and it'll add it to the manifest, and hopefully it'll create it if it doesn't exist. Okay, so now it's created this tool, Zapier Drive, and now I can say to it, let's see if this works. I'll say, please add the one pager in the notes directory to G Drive.
Yeah, that's fine, TST.
Great, I found the one pager. Let me read its contents so we can send it to Google Drive. Okay, so it's called the tool, and now if I go into Zapier, I should be able to see it says it's listening here, so I can test the trigger. It says, I found a record. Here I can see. Continue with the selected record. Continue here, create Google document from text. You can see you've got different things you can do here, including create a document from a template where you can put placeholders and things like that. So, you know, if you wanted to create a template document that you use over and over.
That's fine, go and have a look.
So I'm just going to say create document from text. Sorry, create document from text. Create document from text. Document name. Name. Content. Google Drive. Google Drive folder.
So has it finished?
Whichever folder you want.
Yes. So just give instruction.
Export formats. Exporting anything. So let's continue. Let's test the step. What file type did you use, Chris?
Because
I I thought it would just take Markdown and send it, and it would just magically appear in the Google Doc. But it doesn't like it, so I'm asking it to change, and instead of sending Markdowns, it's gonna send RTF, rich text format. So it's just installing a package, so it can do that now. Okay, it's installed.
What was your command to use Pandoc?
I didn't really specifically tell it, it just decided that that was the right thing it needed. In order to create a rich RTF version.
So did you say that, hey, my Word doc is in Markdown?
I said that, yeah, actually I went to ChatGPT on that occasion and I just said, I'm sending Markdown to a webhook in Zapier to create a Google Doc, the doc's showing in raw Markdown, how do I get it to show?
Give me shapes.
Get it to show
Markdown. Oh.
rich text formatting instead. I think it understood my stupidity. Okay, so let's see, I'm just gonna say rerun the test.
Chris, all of these things it's installing, is it installing it on my laptop?
Yeah, those are libraries, effectively Python libraries that it can then use in the various tools.
They take a lot of space up on your computer.
I mean, it depends on the nature of the library. Most of the ones we'd be using, not really.
And you know, I use a different computer at home.
Yeah.
Like, how do I kind of, is there an easy way to manage that, or is it not really?
It's gonna be stronger because it's picking up.
See, sorry, no, I'm just gonna go to it and say.
It's picking up the.
That's important, I've taken a screenshot. I'm just gonna give it to you and we say, this is what we got.
So the West Coast, those would be flipped around, is my feeling.
So you get into this cycle where, you know, you're giving it feedback, improve, fix. And, you know, my intention here wasn't really to like build a tool, robust tool, it was more just to show you the process of building, how you build a tool. You can see I haven't even really looked at the code that it's written, I haven't really needed to. But in short, what it's doing is changing our tool to send HTML to the webhook rather than rich text format.
To make a document.
So now it's testing it.
In if you go back to
So now let's try again here. Aha.
make a document.
Okay. So there we go.
Okay,
So Chris, sorry, what was the instruction in the end? Did you get that?
In the end, I got this garbage looking document here. And I just screenshotted it and gave it and said, this is what we're getting. And then it's course corrected. And it said, we need to send HTML. And even this is not really perfect, so I might send this back and say, you know, what do you notice?
The location, I can use this.
So we're just sort of iterating, debugging a tool, getting it to do its job properly. See, it says, looking at the screenshot, I noticed several things. The formatting's much better, but there's some issues, extra blank lines, the single I, the title, blah. Let me modify the tool to improve the HTML conversion. Adding proper HTML document structure, including CSS for better formatting, using Pandoc standalone HTML option. I don't know what a lot of that stuff is, but it.
What makes you feel better when you say that, Chris?
Yeah, I haven't really used Pandoc, but I know it's a document conversion library of some kind. But I think you get the idea, right? So just in the space, we've been sitting here for 2 hours. We've learned how to plug into Zapier, which I think you'll all agree, you can see the benefit of that now, right? Like the workflows that you can now go and create in Zapier, and there are some Zapier experts in the room. Romana at the back is an expert on Zapier. Sean Pinwell sitting down with us there downstairs is an expert on Zapier. I'm pretty reasonable. So if you need help with Zapier, we can definitely help you. It is pretty simple to use. And the world is your oyster then. Once you've got your agent talking to Zapier, you can create all sorts of workflows, both in terms of, here we're just creating artifacts, but you can also retrieve knowledge. So, we could create that get email tool where it'll go and get the email, run a search, bring back relevant emails, and then I can ask it questions about my email, Okay, let's see, it's done a final test here. Hopefully now. Yeah, still not quite right. So I'll just keep iterating with it until we've debugged it and fixed up what's going on. But you've seen how that process works. This is probably a 90% now for this. I can just jump into this document, like two tweaks, and we're off to the races. But we can get that to the point where that's working absolutely seamlessly. So now we can talk to our agent, get it to send emails, HTML emails that we can format however the hell we want. Our job is to now curate knowledge, build more tools, and keep improving our instructions. And we can just create all of these. We can basically build up our AI knowledge worker who's gonna sort of, do valuable work for us. Sorry, I just wanna say one more thing. So we didn't do it, okay? We didn't do it in that step, but I encourage you to do this as a test over the next few days. Okay, hear me out on this. The tools we created were quite simple, okay? They didn't use any AI, but we have told our agent that it has access to AI intelligence on tap, right? We know that we've got all sorts of AI models that we could tap into, including Gemini, the one that accepts like 1 million tokens in context. You've got Perplexity Sonar, which has that reasoning that we did that you can get as an API. So now, for example, you could create your own tool called Research Tool, right? Where you just say to the agent, I want you to research such and such a thing. And it knows it has this tool, and it will go and do the research and bring that back to you. So we haven't yet created a tool that uses intelligence, for example, strings a series of prompts together and manipulates content or formats it, but you've got that available in there now, where if I said to it, create a tool that uses an LLM to do the following things, it would know because it's got that guidance document for how to use an LLM, and it would incorporate that into the tool. Does that make sense? So what that allows you to do is build super clever tools that can do weird and wonderful things. So give that a try, and if you run into any roadblocks, let me know. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking with it. I know that there were bits there that were a bit fast and probably a bit loose, but there are plenty of people around who can help. Jason's still around for a few weeks. You can book in office hours with him. Feel free to drop in and ask me questions. Steve's very helpful. Rob's all across the stuff too. Roman at the back's across the stuff. So if you need help, you should be off to the races. Maria, thank you.